Have you ever wondered how to create maps using Python? In this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that. Hi, I'm Jess Temporal, a developer advocate here at Auth0, and I love Python. Today, I'm going to teach you how to create maps and pinpoint locations using Folium, Pandas, and Jupyter Notebooks. Before we dive into code, I want to show you a little bit about the map that we're going to build. So I'm just copying and pasting the name of the map that I have here, and you can see it right here. So this is the map that we're going to build, and I have a bunch of cities pinpointed, and each marker has one color, and the color has meaning. So stick around to see what that means. Now let's go to my terminal. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually activate the Python environment that has all the libraries that I'm going to need for building this map. And to do this, I simply do activate. Now I have my environment activated and I can run my Jupyter Lab server. So Jupyter is actually a web-based interface and is very helpful for dealing with data and visualize things as you go. And that's why I chose Jupyter for this project, because I can see the map that I'm building while I'm building it. So let's pick a notebook. Let's create a new one. And you can see here, this is a cell, and a cell I can put code into it. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually importing the libraries and packages that I'm going to use. And the first one that I'm going to import is actually Folium, which will be the library responsible for creating maps. And the second one will be Pandas. And Pandas is going to be really helpful because it's a data science tool that we can use for reading and dealing with data. So let's run this. And now I have my libraries imported. And you can see here that I have index showing when I ran this cell. So the fastest way you can do to create a map is actually giving it a name and calling Folium map class. And the map class is actually the responsible for creating your map. And if I call my object my map, again, I will be able to render it inside Jupyter, and Jupyter is going to display this map for me. And you can see here that I have a map, but it's a huge one, and I can see many of the details from the map. So I'm going to add a little bit of information to this map. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually add a pinpoint location so that I can zoom in into this map while I'm generating it. And the way to do this is actually using the location parameter and giving to a pair of coordinates, latitude and longitudes. And because I already played around with this map a little bit, I know that I need to give it a zoom factor of 2. And now my map looks just right. Perfect. I'm going to hide this a little bit. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually read the data that I have. And so I created the CSV file to hold all the information from the cities that I either lived on, or that I visited, or that I want to visit someday. And it has the name of the city, the latitude and the longitude, and the status. So I'm going to use Pandas to read it. And to do that, I'm actually storing my data set inside an object called cities. And then I can do just PD, read. And you can see here that Pandas actually helps me read a bunch of data from different types, right? So right now I have a CSV file, so I'm going to use the read CSV method for that. And what I have to do is give it the name of the files that it has to read. And afterwards, I want to see a little bit of the beginning of this data set again. So I'm going to use the method head and give it a 3. And now you can see that I have all the information for my data set inside here. And this is just the first 3 lines. Okay, now I have my map and I have my data. What I want to do is actually pinpoint one of those cities into my map. And To do that, we use another Folium object called marker. And the way the marker works is actually you create the marker and add it to the map. So let's create a marker for the first city in there. And I'm going to actually put the city data inside the city object. And I'm going to access it by doing cities and use the built-in method lock. And lock takes an index as a parameter. So it can take the first row. So this row from index 0, 0. And here I can do actually a Folium dot marker, and I can give it the city information as a location. And in the same way that I did before with the Folium map. And it is a list of city, and I access the information for the city by using square brackets and the name of the column that I'm going to use. So latitude and city, longitude. Awesome. And that is it. That's all that I need to create a marker. And then I can use the marker built-in method add to add it to my map. And because I want to see how that looks like, I'm going to call my map again at the end of this cell. And now if I scroll down here a little bit, you'll see that I have a city over there. And if I zoom in into it, you see that that is all in actually the city that I was born in. Okay, but this is actually annoying. I don't want it to repeat all these Folium marker location for all the cities in my data set. Okay, I only have 22 cities in here, but if your data set grows, it's going to be like tiresome. So let's actually do this in a loop so that I can actually use my data set in an intelligent way. And I'm going to copy my map definition here because I want to overwrite the map every time that I loop over my data set. And for looping, I'm going to use a for and give it a city. And the for is going to loop over the city's data set. And actually, I'm going to use one function, built-in function for the data set that's called iteros. And iteros gives me the row information that I'm going to store in the city object and the row index that I'm going to store in the underscore here. And I'm not going to use at this moment. And if I fix the indentation, because for Python it's really important that you indent correctly your code. Now, every time that I run over the rows of the data set is going to add a marker to my map. And then I'm going to re-render my map with the new information. So if I run this, you can see now that I have all of these different cities over here, right? I can see there that I have Toronto and I see a Sydney here and Taipei. Okay, but I don't want to scroll in each marker to see what city I'm talking about. So one way that we can add a little bit more information to my markers is actually giving it a name. And one way you can do that is actually use the pop-up param. And the pop-up can take any sort of string. I could have like my favorite city here. That would add my favorite city to all of the markers there. But what I want is actually the city name so that I can click on the marker and see what city I'm clicking on. So the way to do this is actually using the name because I have the name inside my data set. And if I rerun this and I click one marker now, I can see the name of the marker. See there, New York. Let's see, Sydney, Taipei, awesome. But clicking it can be pretty hard, especially if you're considering like this cluster of cities here. So I want to give it another level of information. And other than using the pop-up method, I'm going to use also the tooltip one. And tooltip works similarly as the city works, as the pop-up works. And it actually gives you the ability to hover over the marker there and see the name of the city show up in a little tooltip button. And if I hover over here, you can see Toronto, New York. I don't have to actually click it. Awesome. This is really interesting and makes my map have at least 2 more levels of information. I have the markers and I have the city names, but I want to go a little further. I want to add a color that will symbolize if I lived or not in the city, or if I visited the city, or even if I want to visit again because I haven't before. And the way to do this is actually doing a little bit of future engineering. And so let's hide this map and work on doing that feature engineering. And I already have a function that I'm going to use written in my notes. And what this function does is actually check whether or not I lived in or visited a city and give it a color. If I lived in the city, it's going to be pink. If I visited it only, it's going to be purple. And if I have done neither of those things, it's going to be blue. And I'm going to run this so that this function is available for me. And the other thing that I'm going to do is actually create another column in my data set that holds the marker color. And to do this, I once again call on my cities data sets, and I want to give the new column a name, which will be color, because that will hold the color for the marker. And what I do is use the cities apply method. And the apply method is actually going to apply a function to a collection of my data. And I have to pass it along this select marker color function in there. And I want this function to be run across all of the rows. So the way to indicate that I'm going to run it on the rows is actually doing this axis equals 1. And if I take a look again at the beginning of my data, you will see that my cities data set now has a new column there, which will be pink for the ones that I lived, purple for the ones that I visited, and blue for the ones that I haven't done neither. Okay, now I'm going to actually create my map again, and I'm going to add the icon parameter, and the icon parameter is a special parameter that can receive an icon marker, actually an icon object. And I'm going to pass it like this, folium.icon. And this type of object actually receives a color parameter. So now you can color your marker by adding color and saying the city color, because I just created this feature. Now I can use it. And I can run this. And if I scroll down here, you see a bunch of purple, blue, and pink cities, right? Awesome. And now I can see that I visited New York, but I lived there a little bit. So I lived there for a month, so it's pink. And I visited Miami, but haven't lived there. And I have also here Toronto that I went to visit someday. And you can see here that actually my marker changed. It has this little eye for information. So you can have a bunch of fun with this. Actually, I'm going to do a little bit of changing to this marker style, and I can use actually font awesome icons. So I'm going to use the prefix here to indicate that I want to use font awesome as my icons. And the icon itself will be the type of circle. And if I rerun this, you will see now that instead of the I have a little dot there. And the last thing that I want to show you is actually how to save this map, because you might want to display this to somebody or either on your website or send a cool image for your friends. So to do that, you actually use a built-in method for the map object that is called save. And the way to do this actually is calling my map and doing save, and you have to give it a name with the extension. So this is really important because the extension is actually what is going to tell the save method that we can save either an image, a static image like a PNG file, or an interactive image, which will be like HTML. So I'm going to do this my awesome map, and I want it to be interactive because I want to host this on my website. So I'm going to do HTML. And if I run this, and you can see here that I have two maps, the one that I showed you in the beginning of this video and the one that I just generated seconds ago. And if I open this with the HTML viewer, you can see that actually it is my map here. But if I open this with the editor, you can see that it's actually HTML, and it has a bunch of calls to the OpenStreetMap API to generate that map. So if you ever wondered how to create maps with Python, well, now you know. And if you have any questions or want to see more content like this, I'm going to be making a bunch of videos on Python in the near future. So leave a comment down below and see you soon. Bye.